Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, I've got a fun one for you today. We were in the Venezia for this one, and this was probably the closest, most fun game of Legends I have played in a few months, and I even said that at the end of this video. This was, of course, captured from a live stream when I had the Venezia on rental phase or in test phase from Wargaming. It's always a funny little engagement when someone's like, "How much did you pay for that ship, man?" It's like, you don't understand how the Bureau works. But anyway, we were out on the flank here on the new map, Scandinavia, and we were at the Alpha Cap. I wanted to kind of go in a central location. However, abiding by the principles that I always preach, we stayed on this Alpha side, and it works out tremendously in our favor. 5 games? Before we get into the strategy portion of this game, I want to give a shout out to both teams. This game comes down to the wire, and it honestly could have went either way. I also want to give a shout out to our destroyer. He definitely doesn't get rewarded in terms of XP, and it probably wouldn't have been how I would have necessarily played, this spawn or this location. However, you are only viewing the game through your perspective, and sometimes even myself, we tend to forget that, right? So you have to cut your teammates some slack, and as long as they are fulfilling their roles, sometimes you have to be the difference maker in this game, and I believe that we were. But again, GG's to everyone. Let's go ahead and get into the strategy of it. So as we mentioned, we were on the alpha side here. We are slowly backing into this position. We don't kind of overcommit, and that is a mistake I see a lot of agile or cruiser players make. They overcommit to a side without realizing what is there first. At first glance, it looks like there's nothing here, even a destroyer. Even though we have good concealment, we are not detected yet, and we have not detected any other ships. However, our Jutland, as it would be, is moving into the alpha side, and that is when a few ships start to pop up. That is also when the alpha cap goes red, so we know that there is an enemy destroyer in there as that Mino is out of our concealment ring. So we have a Mino, a battleship in the middle, and now a destroyer. On top of that, later on you will notice there is actually a plethora of ships that come to this side. So paying attention to your initial positioning is a surefire way to set yourself up for success. A lot of players ask me, or and I get questions on stream like, how do I become a better player? Well, simply reading the minimap and understanding game flow. Many of you know my analogy for this situation, but it's like approaching somebody at the bar. You can't be too aggressive. You also can't be too timid, and Legends is the same way. You can't gung-ho rush in there, as you will most likely end up sunk. However, you can't sit in the back and do nothing, or nothing will happen, just like most things in life. But in this particular situation, we played it moderately in the middle here, and we are attracting some damage, as is our job. From the Mino, the Vermont, there is actually a Montana approaching, as well as a Brisbane from the middle, and of course, we are being spotted by the Z44. A good habit to get into, especially at the beginning of every game, is to look at the enemy lineup and just gain some intelligence of, are there any radars? What are the destroyers? Do I know their torpedo ranges, etc.? In this case, there was only one destroyer, and as it so happened, he was on our flank. He also happens to have a 12-kilometer torpedo range. Now, I know memorizing each specific torpedo range for each specific destroyer is something probably a lot of players are not going to put enough effort into or even care about, honestly, and I can understand that. However, there are references if you do want to learn. I will link one down below. The World of Warships Legends official wiki is an excellent resource to use, and I know a lot of the lads who created that, they did that on their own time. So go ahead and give that page a visit. It is an excellent resource. But here is kind of what I was talking about with that Jutland. And again, I understand his hesitancy, right? There was a Brisbane right there. There's a Vermont out there. There's also a Mino behind that side. And it looks like the Z44 had him out concealed. Now, the British destroyers do have a massive advantage. I think they are some of the best in this game with their long duration sonar, and that is probably what picked up those torpedoes headed for the Jutland. But as I mentioned, the Jutland plays it a little bit passive, and our team doesn't really do an excellent job of shooting at the Z44 because he remains concealed a majority of the time. As soon as he's spotted, he is right on the edge of his detection range. He doesn't fire his main guns, and he can go concealed once again. So I actually think that both destroyers played this game very well with a tip of the cap to the Z44 for semi-outplaying our Jutland. However, our Jutland, instead of just succumbing to the circumstances, he counters, right? You can see he's doing a loop around the cap, and this is what I talk about while playing destroyers. Don't sacrifice your ship in the opening minutes by trying to get the cap, but it should be a huge goal of yours to get the cap or at least not succeed it right away. And that is exactly what our Jutland was trying to do. However, I think he got radared by the Brisbane. I'm not exactly sure. The enemy, like I mentioned, they were excellent players. They provided excellent team focus fire on our Jutland, and he is now down to 3,000 or 4,000 health. So from the onset of this battle, the enemy team gained a huge advantage as we somehow managed to miss a football-sized stadium with our torpedoes. However, throwing out those long-range Italian torpedoes is always just going to benefit you. I know we kind of laugh about my torpedo accuracy. However, having those torpedoes stored on board does me no good. When I throw them out there, there is always that 1 or 2% chance that we do hit something, and I want you to pay attention to that statement as it does become true later on. At this point in the match, I would like you guys to look over to the Delta Cap. Our team has done a good job over there as well, and like I mentioned, I do have to give them a lot of credit. There was actually a Wooster, you can see him talking on the comms right now, and he was a little unaware of the situation over here on the Alpha Cap because he was like, come on guys, you got to win quicker. Well, if you look at the math here, we are actually kind of at a little bit of a stalemate on each side. And that is when we take a nasty salvo from that Vermont. No citadels, only three or four penetrations there. But that takes about 15 to 20k of our health. So angling, throttle jockeying, and of course using the smoke for the particular Italian cruisers when you can is all going to mitigate your damage total. However, you don't want to remain behind an island 100% of the time, especially not in a cruiser like this. Yes, the Wooster, Brisbane, Mino, and other island humping ships definitely need to utilize that island cover, but the Venezia, the Henry, the Zhao are all sort of meant to be played out in open water, utilizing your good belt armor and speed and agility to avoid those salvos. However, in this particular situation, I wish our battleships would have attracted or tanked that damage a little bit better. You can kind of see our Palmer move in here, and that is when the Z-44 pops up again. He is going in against our Jutland. We take a well-aimed shot, and the SAP does not fool around. We get a little bit trolled by RNG, but even 3 pens there is 5-ish thousand damage off of that Z, and with some decent focus fire now from our team, he has lost about half of his health. Our Jutland did the smart thing, decided to smoke up and run away. We took another salvo at that Z-44, who was slowly going out of our gun range. We got another 2 penetrations, and now we have sort of tied this thing up. And if you actually look at the scoreboard, besides this Alpha Cap here, which we can now control if this Jutland gets in it, this game is essentially tied. However, if you notice our Jutland's health, he is basically a one-shot. So we don't want him to get caught without trading for this Z-44. That is when we notice that our Conqueror, who was around 60,000 health a few moments ago, has now given up all of that health in trade for not even securing the Alpha Cap. I do respect a battleship player who does not sit in the back, as we get a nice citadel on that Mino, but you also have to wonder what was going through his head during this series of events. The Conqueror is a squishy-ish British battleship, which is meant to be played at mid to long ranges, and while, like I said, I do support him utilizing his health, you want to use it a little bit better than sacrificing all of it in a few different moments for each of the enemy ships. We really don't have time to think about it, however, as we are spotted by that Z-44 once again. And seeing as our battleship players went down like sorority girls on a Saturday night, we really don't have much other options than to attract a little bit of this damage and retreat. There is a Montana, Brisbane, and Mino which can utilize concealment because of the spotting from his destroyer. However, you will notice at the Delta Cap that our team has done a good job of winning that engagement. There is only one ship, and that is the blind torpedo I am talking about. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I hit the Montana, but we hit something in that smoke screen there, and by simply throwing those torpedoes out, they have a chance to connect. So I know that they don't do that much alpha strike. However, that is 5 to 8 to 10,000 damage that enemy ship no longer has. And here is the true troll moment of the game. How does this Z44 survive? Our Jutland made the correct play, waiting for me to get my salvo, trying to trade with this Z. However, I missed the salvo. He goes out of range, but you know what? I'm taking the blind fire. I am one with RNG, and RNG is one with me. We don't really need the added dispersion you get from locking onto the target. We connect another SAP salvo, and that Z44 is eliminated. I say this without hyperbole. If you're looking objectively, that probably won us the game. If that Z44 is allowed to live with how well he has been utilizing his concealments, the only other radar cruiser is on the opposite flank, and by the time that he would have made his way over here, I don't think it would have mattered in terms of, trying to get capture points and other objectives in order to win. So your lesson of the day is to always take your blind fires. Use a good lead. When you lock onto the target, it kind of throws your aim down a little bit, so when you lose that lock, I put that value or that reticle a little bit above where I believe it would have been had we had target lock. Also, your little fun Legends fact of the day, when you use target lock or you select, it kind of selects that ship, that actually decreases your dispersion by 50%. So you are going to see less accurate salvos when you don't have auto aim or target lock selected. However, sometimes that is a little more beneficial as those shells kind of go everywhere, and in this case, it helped us hit that Z, which had gone concealed. Your Legends fun fact of the day is the target lock, or the little selector when you grab on or it kind of locks onto a ship, actually decreases your dispersion by 50%. So when you lose that or you're blind firing, you will notice some salvos that are slightly less accurate. But we really don't have time to think about that because the Brisbane pops up in our concealment ring. We use our last rolling smoke as there is a Montana out there on the broadside. We are sort of covered by this island, but considering that I'm in a new ship and I believe this player knew who I was, I want to play as passive as possible, and I was correct as you saw those shells land just a touch short, but that is because we turned out. So knowing where the enemy ships are and whether or not you're in a crossfire or broadside to them, I see so many players just like, well, when I get deleted from across the map, it's like, well, you weren't paying attention then. That was one of the arguments. I made a video such a long time ago about, playing with cross-play lobbies off, and some guys like, it takes so much more skill because I just hate when I get cross-map from somebody else. Like, no, that is a lack of skill if that happens to you. Not paying attention to the other targets or enemy threats is a lack of skill. So, yeah, I'm not sure why that was even a debate. But regardless here, this Brisbane is trying to push in and gain an advantage for his team as our Worcester does the smart thing. This guy was yapping a lot, and I actually said this at the end of the game, but he actually did make some pretty good plays, and his score is a reflection of that. We decided to stick with the SAP in this situation with how lightly armored the Brisbane and Mino are, and even the American superstructure of the Montana. We are always going to be getting consistent damage, as you see there. Somebody hit him, but we finished off with 2 SAP shell hits, which does get us our third, but not final, kill. And again, I want to reiterate, we took a few more salvos from that Montana, but because we were paying attention, maneuvering, and angling away, those shells did not come close to hitting our boat. It's at this point in the game I'm kind of taking toll and realizing if one of our ships go down, we could potentially lose this game as the Worcester just gets reset. You can see he is down to about 2,000 or 3,000 health. If a few of those salvos had gone differently, this game could have completely turned in the opposite direction, and it's points like these that infuriate me when players don't understand that. Now, of course, I'm kind of pushing in here, so a little bit of hypocrisy on my end. However, our Zhao is close enough to both this Montana and Mino that if he gets detected, he could get shot and lose. And in that situation, I would have the crossfire, such as I do in this case with this Montana. We get a few salvos off, beautifully aimed on the superstructure. 12,000 damage, 11,500 off of that Montana for our 4th kill. That is when the Mino pops up. He is caught in a crossfire. We're going to continue to shoot here. We were caught a little bit broadside, but the game is winding down, and we gave our team an advantage. And it actually doesn't matter because we aimed that shot near to perfection. Leading the target like that, shells tend to land short, especially when ships are going away from you. It's self-explanatory. However, in order to avoid that, you want to throw that salvo high. And guys, just a beautifully played game on both ends. I said this at the end. GG's to everyone. We got 27-86, and we actually didn't even finish in first place with a crack in there. Shout out to our Vermont 28-25, 23-22, and then a little bit of a drop off from the rest of our team. But even then, 1,700 all the way down to 1,500 are decent to average scores. Like I said, at the end of this earlier, the Jutland did his job, so a GG's to him, and of course a GG's to the enemy team. There are some decent scores all across that board as well, and this is, to me, what is the most fun in Legends, when the games are not absolute washes within the first 5 minutes. I understand it's a very casual, free-to-play game, and not everyone treats it like the Super Bowl, but by simply abiding by the principles of, hey, don't be a silly goose in the opening minutes, you can draw a lot of these games a lot closer, get more damage, and have a lot more fun, quote unquote, in the process. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys have a fantastic Monday. We will be on stream tonight. I love you guys. Hey, run out. Peace.